So there's been a lot of discussion about how the United States may have lost in Afghanistan. We did lose. We spent over $1 trillion, 20 years, numerous people were killed, soldiers, civilians, etc. All for the Taliban, of course, to take the entire country in a very short amount of time. So now, on paper, militarily, that looks like a devastating defeat. However, a devastating defeat, of course, for the U.S. military, the now non-existent Afghan military, and it's a huge win for the Taliban. But there is a winner, another winner that a lot of people are not talking about, and that is, of course, defense contractors. I've seen a few talking about them, and that's good, because I think that's pretty much the major story here is defense contractors in the Pentagon. In fact, The Intercept came out with a report recently which spells out just how much winning was had by defense contractors over the 20 wasted years in Afghanistan. John Schwartz, in a recent piece, talks about how the major defense contractors, Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics, made out from the war like bandits. Now, all of those, except for Boeing, receive lucrative government contracts. So now Schwartz writes that it is incorrect to conclude that the Taliban's immediate takeover of Afghanistan upon the U.S.'s departure means that the Afghanistan war was a failure. On the contrary, from the perspective of some of the most powerful people in the U.S., it may have been an extraordinary success. Notably, the boards of directors of all 5 defense contractors include retired top-level military officers. So they go from the military, and then they go work at these defense contractors. And is it any wonder why they continue to advocate for endless warfare? Well, you got to make money. If you're a defense contractor, you know, your daddies, the people that you want to work with after you're out of the military. Now, again, nobody really talks about that, save for a few progressive indie channels, how the Pentagon is filled to the brim with defense contractors and vice versa. Again, they rail for endless wars. One example is our current Secretary of Defense. Recently sat on the board of Raytheon. And there's more. Ronald Moultrie, Biden's Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, came from at least a dozen consulting firms and contractors, which he joined after holding positions in the NSA, CIA, and Navy. Frank Kendall, Biden's Secretary of the Air Force, worked as a consultant for Northrop Grumman. But it's not just Biden. Again, Biden is the latest example of hiring, putting in defense contractors into positions of power, and then vice versa, them getting out of the military. But it all feeds this giant machine that is the military industrial complex. Again, we had it under Trump. We had it under Obama. We had it under Bush. The Pentagon has always been filled with people from the private defense industry and vice versa in this sickening revolving door of corruption. And then you wonder, when you look at that, and you look at the incentives for these people to continue to push for endless war, well, you begin to see why it's endless war, why we've always been at war for at least my entire lifetime, almost. But if you're still not sure, here's some more information to consider. So now, Schwartz did the math, okay? And he said that if you would purchase $10,000 of stock, I know, imagine that, right? I don't know if there's anybody in my audience that has $10,000 that they can go and spend on stock, much less assets, right? And if you do, that's fantastic. You're doing incredibly well. Hats off to you. But if you're somebody who invested $10,000 worth of stock between 5 different defense contractors back on September 18th, just after 9/11, 2001, the day President George W. Bush signed the authorization for use of military force, which, by the way, only one congresswoman was against, Barbara Lee. She deserves to get all credit in the world because at the end of the day, she was 100% correct. But, so now, if you reinvested the dividends from that stock, your stock would be worth almost $100,000. $97,295. Now, when you compare it to the rest of the stock market, and this is where it gets really, interesting. It turns out that is a far greater return that was available in the overall stock market over the same period. So if you had invested $10,000 in an S&P 500 index fund on September 18th, 2001, it would actually only be worth about $61,613. So in reality, defense stocks outperformed the stock market by over 58%, over half, during the Afghanistan War. Gee, I wonder if we should follow the money. I wonder. Now, there's more here. Look, we have a military-industrial complex. We're warned against that. In fact, President Dwight Eisenhower warned us about that military-industrial complex. And you also had former CIA contractor and academic Chalmers Johnson saying this: I guarantee you, when war becomes that profitable, you're going to see more of it. And this was all in a documentary called Why We Fight. It was in the early 2000s, saying, quote, a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel also said this in that film: American people who have had a son or daughter that is going to be deployed, they look at the cost benefit and they go, I don't think that's good. But when politicians who understand contracts, future contracts, when they look at war, they have a different cost benefit analysis. And that, of course, is war is good for business. It's profitable. How profitable? So again, going back to what Schwartz did, so he plugged some numbers in for investments and saw basically calculated how much of a return on investment somebody investing $10,000 in the different stocks would receive, how much of a return, right? So now for Raytheon, a total return of about 331.49%. That is worth. That is on $10,000 worth of stock. Now they also point out that the board includes a retired Air Force general, Alan Pawlikowski, James Winfield Jr., a retired Navy admiral, Robert Work, a former deputy Secretary of Defense, Lockheed Martin. Their return for that $10,000 investment since 2001 would be about 1,235.6%. A $10,000 stock purchase today, a 2001 stock purchase today, would cost $133,559.21. The board includes Bruce Carlson, a retired Air Force general, Joseph Dunford Jr., a retired Marine Corps general, General Dynamics, a little bit less of a return on that $10,000, of only 625.37%. Ooh, oh, not doing very well. But in real dollars, that $10,000 stock purchase would be worth today $72,515.58. The board of General Dynamics includes Rudy DeLeon, a former deputy Secretary of Defense, Cecil Haney, a retired Navy admiral, James Mattis, former Secretary of Defense and former Marine Corps general, and a Peter Wall, a retired British general. And then finally, we go to Northrop Grumman, whose total return on a $10,000 investment. So if you bought $10,000 worth of Northrop Grumman, that stock purchase would be worth today $129,644.84, with an increase of 1,196.14%. The board of Northrop Grumman includes Gary Roughead, a retired Navy admiral, Mark Welsh III, a retired Air Force general. So, wow. You want to talk about greed, you want to talk about corruption, especially, you might want to look at the Pentagon. You might want to look at where all this money is going and the reason that we continue to go disastrous war after disastrous war after disastrous war. It's all about the money. It's all about greed. Follow the money. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.